All right, so recording the session for later so everybody will get that recording. So happy New Year. Thank you guys for joining us so early in the new year. This is our first session of the new year. And let me tell you a little bit about how this session is going to work. We are going to be working through 4 official questions today, varying difficulties. They're all hard questions though, so I shouldn't say varying difficulties. They're all official hard questions, but they're going to have various portions underlined. So you're going to get a variety here today, and you're going to see how we at e-GMAT approach sentence correction. So the session itself is going to be about 120 minutes, followed by about 20 minutes of questions and answers from Rajat at the end of the session. And we know that there's 2 different types of learning out there. You have that book-based architecture where you can teach yourself through books, and then that part of it tutoring-based architecture. And what we do at e-GMAT's a little bit different. It's kind of a blend of both. So you're really going to get the best of both worlds through working with us. For the first question, I am going to move over this poll. We're going to use polls for you to answer these questions today. So you're going to see this poll open at the top, and I'm going to open this poll. And if you're going to join me in solving this question, you're going to click on that Still Solving button down at the bottom. So those of you that are answering, move your answer down into Still Solving. And I see we have about 148 people in the session right now. And in order to get the most out of the session, you're going to need to participate by solving these questions and really engaging. So I would love to see at least 100 people click on that Still Solving button and really engage in this session and get the most out of it. And these polls are my way to communicate with you. So please, please, please engage in these polls. We will use later short answer polls and the yes no polls also to engage in the session. The Q&A pod down below again is, and I will reveal the question. I know you can't see the question yet because I'm waiting to see how many people we have actually participating, and then you're going to go ahead and put your answers in. I'm going to unbroadcast the results. You're going to put your answers in that poll above. Timing. Now, normally about 90 seconds is what we like to see students take to solve a question. We're going to go with the pulse of the class today. So I'm going to wait until about 75 to 80% of you have solved the question. Then I'm going to give that 30-second warning and try to encourage the rest of you to wrap up. We don't want to rush you too much today. Today is more about learning the proper process to use in solving the questions instead of getting that time down, okay? So I will reveal the question. It looks like I've got close to almost 100 of you, not quite, but I'm going to go ahead and unbroadcast these results so you can't see the answers. Now for this first question, I want you to use whatever method you currently use to solve questions. Best of luck. 30 seconds remaining. Okay, I have about 7 of you that still need to lock in those final answers. If you could go ahead and get those answers locked in, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm going to give you guys about 5 more seconds. And then I'm going to close the poll. Okay, I've got about 6 of you. 5, 4, you guys gonna lock them in? 3, 2, 1. Okay, ending the poll. All right, so hopefully you guys felt pretty comfortable with this question. I want you to think about the thought process you used in answering this question and what approach you used. And I want you to be really honest with yourself. At this point, there's no right or wrong. I just want you to think about that approach. And one possible approach that you used is a very common approach in solving SC questions. And that is to scan through, read through the question pretty quickly, and then you scan your answer choices for similarities. So if you read through this question and you see the overall slackening of growth and productivity is influenced less by government regulations, although that is significant for specific industries like mining, then coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agriculture productivity. And then you automatically spot this less by up here, and you scan your answer choices really quickly, and you decide, okay, which split is going to be correct. And you notice the less by, so you know your grammar rules pop in to your mind, and you know, well, if I have less by, then I need another by for the sake of parallelism. So you automatically reject A and B because you don't see a by, and you eliminate those. Okay, so I want to ask, I'm going to bring this yes, no poll back really quickly. And I want to ask, how many of you are using kind of this splits approach? This kind of what I call a fast food method. You're just scanning, you're eliminating, and you're removing choices. We know it's not necessarily the best approach for us. Well, I'm going to show you it's not necessarily the best approach for us, but it's a quick approach. Okay, so I'm seeing the majority of you aren't using this method, which is new and different. So that starts my new year off a little bit better. And I'm going to show you why this isn't the best approach to use. So if we look at choices C, D, and E, and we look at C and we see, okay, by the coming to an end of, that looks weird. It's a little wordy. So we eliminate C, okay, and then we go to D and E. And by ending and by the end of, the majority, and data shows this to us, that the majority of people are going to reject D because the end of is parallel to the government regulation. Both are nouns. So the majority of people pick choice E. And I'm going to broadcast our results really quickly and show you that that's true for our data sampling here as well. Okay, 35% of you landed on choice E of people. Oh, my annotations are not great today. Sorry about that. So 35% of you landed on choice E by using this approach. Now, but the majority of you are telling me you're not using this approach. So let's talk about possibly what happened here. And let's talk about how this isn't a great result to get. And again, this is from an official question. They call it a grammar-based question, but I'm going to kind of argue with the official people here because I don't think this is fully a grammar-based question. Yes, you need some tools of grammar to get to the correct answer, but you can't solve difficult questions just by using grammar, and you can't solve difficult questions by using this splits method. So if you're in that 45% that say you're using this type of approach, this isn't going to get you to the correct answer choice. Maybe once in a while, but not regularly. Just like fast food is okay every once in a while, but on a regular basis, it's not going to be the best thing for our bodies. So we need to correct our approach, correct our thinking in order to get to that 90th percentile that we're looking for. So we're going to work through this using our meaning-based approach that we use at e-GMAT. And this approach, I will be honest with you, is a game changer. I've been an English teacher for decades, and coming to e-GMAT, I was like, no, grammar's the way to go. That's the way to solve all SC questions. But once I started working with GMAT, I realized it's really a test of communication, and it's really a test of logic. And grammar is just a tool to facilitate that communication and logic. So meaning absolutely has to be paramount. And this approach is an absolute game changer. And I was not a believer when I started with the company, and they have 100% convinced me now after working with GMAT. So let's talk about the approach. The first thing we do is we have to read through the sentence slowly and really understand what's going on. And this is what I call actively reading the sentence. And you'll see things highlighted in blue and green, and those are going to be our subject verb pairs in the sentence. And we highlight those because those are foundational components that you really have to see in order to understand what's going on in the sentence. So as we read, the overall slackening of growth in productivity is influenced. And whenever you come across a subject for pairs, you kind of pause and assess, okay, so I know I have this slackening, and this slackening is of growth and productivity, and this slackening is influenced. Okay, what is it influenced by? Ask yourself some probing questions to work through the sentence. It's influenced less by government regulation. Okay, so this is one influence, this government regulation, although that is significant. So that referring to this government regulation is significant for specific industries like mining. Then the coming to an end of, so this is, I have my second piece, this coming to an end of the period, sorry for the messy annotations, that's reason 2, the period of rapid growth in agriculture productivity. Okay, so seems to be the meaning is pretty straightforward. We can pull all of this probing question answers into key aspects. The sentence explains the factors behind the reduction in growth and productivity. The second aspect or main idea of the sentence is the said reduction happens for 2 reasons. Government regulation, we marked those up, and the fact that the period of rapid growth in agriculture is coming to an end. And the third thing is the comparison is stated, right? We have less by, then the coming to an end of. So comparison stated is number 2, which is this entity down here, has more impact than the first entity, which we marked up here. So this entity down here has more impact than the first one. Okay, so how many of you are spending time spending this much time up front extracting the meaning? Okay, so I'm seeing a balance. Okay, and we're not even done extracting the meaning yet. So, and I know you guys are going, oh, this is a time test. How do we do this in, 90 seconds? Once you master this approach, it becomes really quick, and you can absolutely do it. Because if you spend the time up front, it's going to save you time later because you're going to go through your answer choices a lot quicker. So here's a meaning deep dive. I'm going to remove this yes, no poll. I'm going to bring in another poll because I love my polls, and this is the only way I get to talk to you. So I want you to tell me, what does the underlined portion mean in the sentence? The coming to an end of. What does this mean? Give you guys about 30 seconds. Lots of participation, please. Got 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Anybody want to click in any final answers? All right. See some shifting. Okay, so let's talk about this. The coming to an end of, and I've got some illustrations. My woolly mammoths. Shraddha made this for me, and it's a great visual illustration for any visual learners out there. So if we have the sentence, the woolly mammoth became extinct by the coming to an end of the Ice Age, I get this sense that in period A, I had this large group of woolly mammoths. And by the time I get to period D down here, I see that slowly over the course of time, that these woolly mammoths have become extinct, right? So slowly as the period's been drawing to an end, the number has declined over the course of time. I'm sorry if my voice is breaking intermittently. I'm fighting a cold, you guys. I'm starting to get a cold. So if it cracks, I apologize. Okay, so that is the meaning of choice A. Now choice B. The woolly mammoth became extinct by ending the Ice Age. Now, this would entail that some entity ended the period, right? That some natural thing or some person came in and boom, did an action that ended the period and thus made the woolly mammoth extinct. So that's the ending of the period. An action happened ending the Ice Age. It doesn't give us that sense that things were slowly drawing to an end over the course of time. It's just the ending of the period. Now, the end of the period, the woolly mammoth became extinct by the end of the Ice Age. That would indicate, whoops, it jumped, apologies. That would indicate that we had a certain group in A, and by some point in D, they went extinct. It doesn't give us a slow decline of numbers that our visual image shows. So if I broadcast the results here, we see the majority of you picked choice A, which is absolutely the correct answer choice, okay? It absolutely, the coming to an end of means that period is slowly drawing to an end, okay? That it's slowly wrapping up, that the numbers slowly declined over the course of time as we got to the end of the period. Okay, so 71% of you understand what that means. Okay, now look at our aspects, and if you focused, my PowerPoint does not want to agree with me right now. If you focused on the meaning of this underlying portion and you focused on those key aspects, you need to ask yourself what portion of this meaning, because 71% of you answered this correctly, but not 71% of you got to the correct answer choice. And I'm not going to tell you what the correct answer choice is yet, but I want you to think of that meaning, that slow drawing to an end of the period. Okay. Now think of those aspects and think, were you able to get all that meaning from all of those aspects? Now, after we've had this meaning discussion, I'm going to give you a chance to revisit this question and see, will you change your answers? I'm going to unbroadcast this because we're going to do a little bit of a comparative analysis. How are you answering now? Give you guys just about a minute. Really think about that meaning that we just discussed. About 20 seconds left to lock in those final answers. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. All right. So I'm going to broadcast both results, and then we're going to discuss this so you guys can see. It's not, I guess I didn't do as great a job convincing you guys as I had hoped. Okay, so let's talk about and actually get to the correct answer choice here. So we have our key aspects, and we know that the coming to an end of means that slow drawing to an end, okay? And now that we have that meaning we discussed, once we've read through it, we've extracted those key aspects, we understand that meaning, and we've really analyzed the coming to an end of means that slow drawing to an end of that period of time. We can do our grammar check, our subject verbs work out, our verbs are fine, our pronouns are fine. But as we discussed when we were discussing that splits method, we have that parallelism error, that by is missing, right? We have less by government regulations, so we need than by in order to balance things out. I always think of parallelism as a seesaw. Everything needs to be balanced out in order for it to work. So we definitely need the by there. There is nothing else wrong with our sentence except for that missing by. The meaning is absolutely working as far as the coming to an end of the period. So there's no reason to change our meaning here. We just need the answer that adds that by to correct that parallelism. So when we go to our answer choice analysis, yes, we can quickly reject A and B because the by is missing. That leaves us with C, D, and E. Now we did our meaning analysis. We spent that time right up front. So we know that from our aspects, the growth in agriculture productivity is coming to an end over the course of time. It's slowly drawing to an end, just like those woolly mammoths slowly became extinct as the period drew to an end. So we know choice D is going to be incorrect because, whoops, it jumped again, apologies. Choice D is going to be incorrect because we get that meaning change, that aspect of ending the said period. And there's nothing that is ending the period here, so we indeed get that meaning change. So you have to understand this is a test of meaning and logic. The parallelism is fixed, but it's a meaning change here. So choice C also gives us that meaning change, and that's the big debate we see having going on. So if you see, the first time we attempted this, 35% of you landed on choice E, which is the incorrect answer because we get that meaning change. We don't get that sense of the period slowly drawing to an end. We just get that sometime by the end of the period, this happened. But that's not what the author is intending to communicate here. He's intending to give us that sense that as the period slowly comes to an end, the coming to an end of is very different than by the end of. Okay, so choice C is indeed the correct answer choice. So always begin with understanding the meaning and utilizing your logic in order to get yourself to the correct answer choice. So let me do some poll cleanup really quickly, get these polls out of here. I want to ask you guys, let me bring back this yes/no poll. Clear these answers out of here. How are we feeling about using the meaning here? Are we understanding the reason behind spending the time with the meaning up front? Okay, good. I see about 188 of you in here, so I'd like to get a little bit more participation, but I'm not going to hold up the rest of the class. Okay, so I'm seeing you guys. Let me grab, that's not the poll I want. Hold on. I want to grab the poll for the next question. There we go. We're going to move on to question 2. So there we go. Okay, so this was, no, just click and still solving. There we go. So I want you guys to see, we're going to move on to question 2. Really quick, some information on observations from question 1, just to give you guys some data. This was from OG Advanced. 25% of the question was underlined. And what you're going to see as we move through this is all the questions are going to have different amounts underlined. Do not let the amount that is underlined in the question freak you out. You're going to treat all questions the same. Splits in grammar, you could use that to reject 2 choices, but your grammar only got you through 2 choices on this question. So we had to use meaning to get to that final correct answer choice. Absolutely 100% meaning. That was the only way to get to the correct answer choice. So as we move into question 2, I only have 24 people that have clicked on still solving. I really hope more of you are going to be solving question 2 with me. Go ahead and click on still solving. I want you to really, really try to use the meaning-based approach with this next sentence. Even if this is a new approach for you, try to spend the time up front with that meaning, read slowly, pause, pull the key aspects, pull those main ideas. Then after you really have a good handle on the meaning, then check your grammar, then find the errors, then move through your answer choices. Know what you're looking for as you move through the answer choices. Can we get a few more people? How about 15 more of you click on still solving? Can we get to the 100 mark? I've got 85. I know it's the new year. Wake up. Let's work hard in the new year. 2 more, and then I will reveal the question. 1 more. Thank you. All right, best of luck. 30 seconds remaining. Okay, there's about 6 of you that still need to lock in your answer choices. 5, if the last 4 of you could make your final choices, we'll go ahead and start discussing the questions. I'll end the poll. I'm gonna give you guys about 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ending the poll. All right, I'm going to reopen this yes/no poll. Tell me, how was this? Did you guys try to use this meaning-based approach? And did you feel more confident? Okay. Awesome. I like what I see. For the 11% of you that did not try, what's the point, guys? Come on. If you're not going to try the new approach. Okay, lovely. Thank you for all of you that are trying the new approach. And hopefully, looking at your data, I think it's paying off. Let's get started. Let's get to work. I'm going to move this yes/no poll out of here. I'm going to stretch up this short answer poll. Stretch your fingers out. I'm going to make you do some typing here as we discuss this one. So first step, reading slowly through the sentence, really spending the time up front extracting the meaning. I'm going to open this so you guys can type some answers in there as I ask questions. Although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. So right away, when I see the word although in a sentence, I know I'm looking for what? Tell me in that short answer poll. I need to keep my eyes. That should be an alert word for you guys. Perfect. Contrast. Thank you. All right. I'm going to broadcast. Yes. Contrast. All right. Thank you. Yes. So I know I'm looking for a contrast of something. So I'm going to keep my eye out for that contrast. And I know that something is appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. So I have lots of descriptions going on, very vivid sentence. And I know I'm probably dealing with food here because I'm dealing with supermarket cousins. So I keep reading. Heirloom tomatoes. All right, so this, I know I have my subject here, heirloom tomatoes, grown from seeds saved during the previous year. So grown from seeds, this is a modifier giving me information about heirloom tomatoes, describing how these heirloom tomatoes are grown. They are grown from seeds saved during the previous years. Okay, they, now my question here for you, they is a pronoun. I call these pronoun demons. And there's some questions we've put out on YouTube lately dealing with pronouns. I think one's dealing with the hagfish, one's dealing with dinosaur tracks. And I constantly in these articles refer to pronouns as pronoun demons, because if we don't sort our pronouns out up front, they can really mess with our sentence, because we have to know what our pronouns are referring to. So whenever you see a pronoun in a sentence, stop and pause and ask, okay, they, what is they referring to? They are often green and striped. They have plenty of bumps and bruises. Perfect. Awesome. Heirloom tomatoes. Thank you so much. You guys are doing the work for me. Heirloom tomatoes. So I'm going to make a note here. Heirloom tomatoes are often green and striped or have plenty of bumps and bruises. Yes, because they is serving as the subject for these two verbs. So that's making sense. Now, if you were like, no, it's referring to supermarket cousins, remember, supermarket cousins have already been described as round and red, so it wouldn't make any sense for them to be described as green and striped and plenty of blimps and bruises, okay? So we're absolutely right. They is referring to heirloom tomatoes. Our pronouns making sense. It properly agrees. All right, meaning is clear. Heirlooms, okay, some more information about these heirlooms. Heirlooms are more flavorful and thus increasing in demand. All right, so worked through my sentence. A lot of information about these tomatoes. So I'm going to pull these key aspects, but remember, one of the ways I said we could pull key aspects is through probing questions. So I'm going to ask you guys some probing questions, and then we're going to turn those probing questions into key aspects. So first question I have is, what appears less appetizing than most of the round and red supermarket cousins? Perfect. Heirloom tomatoes. All right, next probing question. What are grown from seeds saved during the previous year? Perfect. Heirloom tomatoes. All right, third one. What are often green and striped, have plenty of bumps and bruises? Again, perfect. Heirloom tomatoes. And the third one. What are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand? Again, perfect. Heirloom tomatoes. So now that we have all of these questions answered, our meaning is really clear. We can turn those answers into these key aspects. And my next question for you is going to be, what is the contrast? That was my first question. What does although indicate? And you properly told me it indicated a contrast. So what is the contrast here? And you can tell me it's between aspect 1 and aspect 3, aspect 1 and aspect 2, aspect 1 and aspect 4. What two aspects is the contrast between? Okay, good. Seeing lots of variation here, but some of the right answer. Good job, guys. Absolutely. It's between aspect 1 and aspect 4. Heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. Heirlooms are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand. So even though they look ugly, and they really do, you should check them out if you can find them in your local produce sections. They're really ugly, but they're delicious. I tried them. They are ugly, but even though they're ugly, they're delicious. So that's the contrast, okay? And is that contrast logical? Does it make sense? Absolutely. So the contrast is between what they look like and how they taste compared to those supermarket cousins. All right, now meaning is clear. Next step is going to be what? We read slowly, we extracted the meaning, we checked our meaning. What's our next step in the e-GMAT approach? Let me clear these answers. I'm asking more questions than I normally do. Look for an error. Perfect, error analysis, yay! All right, so are there any grammatical errors in this sentence? Yes, yes there is. Okay, so what is the grammatical error? I'm making you guys work hard on this one because Shraddha is going to make you work even harder. Okay, so I'm seeing some subject verb, no verb. Good. Good work, guys. Excellent. Yes, we have no verb for heirloom tomatoes. Excellent, excellent. So heirloom tomatoes does not have a verb. You'll notice they, the pronoun that refers to heirloom tomatoes, has the verb are and have, and heirlooms down here has the verb are. But this subject, heirlooms, up here is missing its verb. So we have that subject verb must exist error going on here. No verb for heirloom tomatoes. So we can move to our answer choice analysis. We can scan our answer choices. And we can see choice B, which I could do. I'm doing my happy dance over here behind my desk. 50% of you landed on choice B, which is a huge jump in correct answer choice than our first question. Makes me really, really happy. Very few of you landed on choice A, which tells me that you were able to spot that subject-verb error. Choice C, very few of you landed there as well, but again, this repeats the no verb error. The next most popular choice was choice D, and this follows the data we see. Look at this choice very carefully. Yes, the subject-verb error has been taken care of. There is a verb for heirloom tomatoes. Heirloom tomatoes appear. So this has been, the original error has been taken care of. But look at choice D. Where's the contrast? If a contrast has been presented to you in the original sentence, and that's part of the original meaning, that must be maintained. And choice D removes that contrast and thus changes the meaning. So that's a meaning change in choice D, and we have no reason to change the meaning here because there was nothing illogical about that contrast. So choice D changes that meaning. And so we're rejecting it. And then choice E, again, not very many of you landed there. Again, the verb is missing. It's a pretty clear error. So choice B is clearly the winner here. And you guys did a great job getting to the correct answer, but I want to make sure. Contrast isn't there in D. Grown from seeds saved during the previous year, heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing. Most of their rounded red supermarket cousins, they are often green and striped or have planted. There's no contrast. It's stating fact. There's absolutely no contrast in choice D. It's just a statement of fact across the board. It can't be kind of. I mean, when we have an explicit contrast, it's explicit contrast, right? It's just stating two facts about the two types of tomatoes. It's not contrasting them at all. And we don't want to go with kind of, sort of, possibly. We want to go with what's right. Don't get into the grammar of the dependent clauses and all of that. You don't need to. Your meaning is clear. The grammar is correct. They removed the contrast. There's no reason to go into what type of clauses we have and all that. That's what's going to bog you down and take away your time. Okay? So we're not even going to engage in that joke because that's what's going to like pull you in. And we're not even going to play that game. Okay? So I'm going to shut you guys down now because you don't even need to go there. Would have, should have, could have. Okay? So extract all the aspects of meaning, which I think you guys did a much better job of this time, because when you do that, especially with subject-verb error sentences, the sentence seems incomplete. And when you have that sense of incompleteness, you kind of know what to look for. And when you get that, you find those subject-verb errors. So observations here, 25% of the sentence was underlined in that first question. Here we had 55% underlined. All right? Split's not possible here. Two possible choices, B and D, grammatically correct, but meaning change. And that's what the test takers know. That's what they lure you in with choice D. And that is the stated error there, is the contrast has been removed. So 100% meaning is required to get to that correct answer choice. All right, question 3. This is where I turn it over to Shraddha. It's about to get a lot harder, but she has all the tips and tricks for you. I call her the Batman of our group because she will definitely tell you how to handle these. So I'm going to turn the mic over to her, and I will see you guys all down in the Q&A pod if you have any further questions.
Hello everybody. If you can hear me all right, let me just bring in the yes or no poll and let's hear from you. If you guys can hear me all right, clearing all results here. Quick responses. I can see my microphone moving, so I'm hopeful that all of you can hear me well. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Stacy, for that generous introduction. And thank you for taking us through the meaning-based approach and why we are talking so much about meaning-based approach, as Stacey already mentioned, and I would just like to reiterate here that through sentences, we actually want to communicate some idea, and that idea has to be logical. So it is the logic that first gets conceived in our head because we want to convey something logical, and then we use the grammar just as a tool to convey that logic. All right, and that's exactly what we try to do when we solve SC questions. The idea through testing your SC skills is not to see what a great grammarian you are. Basically, the intent of this section is that how well you can interpret the information that is given in the sentence, and if there is any error, what would you do to fix that? So really, it is not the test of your grammar, it is the test of how well you are able to interpret and understand the logic conveyed through the original sentence. And why through the original sentence? Because the original sentence is the complete sentence that has the complete context of the sentence, right? And that's exactly what we saw with the first two questions. The context was complete. In terms of logic, we did not really have to work too hard to figure out that what is the logic in the sentence, whether the sentence is logical or not. Both the sentences presented absolutely logical, meaning they were just off in their grammar. The author did not use the grammatical tools correctly to form these questions. So now you may have a question over here that, is it so that every single question that I solve in SC is going to be like that? It's going to give me the logical meaning. I would just have to worry about the grammar in that sentence? No. Then that would not have been the test of logic. Then that is the test of grammar. There will be many sentences, and especially the hard sentences. The hard sentences, they really work more on logic than on grammar, because if you know your grammar inside out, identifying a grammatical error will be a cakewalk for you. But if you are not paying attention to the meaning and the logic of the sentence, that's where the snares and the traps are there, and you may fall for it, and it happens all the time. We saw it with our first question very, very prominently, that if we did not understand the meaning of that small underlined phrase in our question number 1, and then there were very alluring choices, and most of us fell for it. So it's very, very important to understand the meaning from the original sentence, because that sentence is complete with the context and has logic right inside it. Now, many of the students, I've heard them say that, why can't we just look at the answer choices to figure out the meaning of the sentence? Well, how can you find out the logic of the complete sentence by looking at the fragment? That doesn't work. My logic says that it doesn't work, because a fragment of the sentence cannot give you the entire logic of the sentence. In order to understand the logic that the author wants to communicate, you will have to look at the entire sentence. And that's why we've been talking about spending all that time with the original sentence. Okay, so with this understanding, we are now going to solve the third question in this session. And as I was giving you the introduction to this section, basically, in this section, questions 3 and 4, we will look at those questions that will not give you logical meaning. Okay, so how do we deal with questions like that? I'm not going to tell you that right now. I first want to see, at least through question 3, what is your method of solving that question, and then definitely we'll deliberate upon it. Now, you've already gotten some experience. You will not see this question unless I have a good number of people clicking on still solving, because that's the only way for me to know as to how you are participating. Also, we are not timing you in this session. It's the pace of the class that sets the timing. So if I have the real number as to how many of you are engaging in this activity with me, it becomes I mean, you are definitely going to set the pace of this section, of the session. So yes, I would request all of you to participate, because, you know, that way that it'll ensure that we are learning. Okay, so here I go. That's the third question on your screen. And all the best. Keep that meaning hat on while you look at this one. All right, I see that more than 80% of the class is done answering this question. So let's take about 10 more seconds and then we will get into the discussion. Five seconds. Okay, my timer says it's done. So I see 4 on, still solving. If you guys just want to take a wild guess, just pick a choice, move on, else I'm going to close the poll here. Okay, so now let's discuss this question and how to solve those such questions. Let's say those questions that do not present logical meaning when we read them. Okay, so 3-step meaning-based approach. We always say that break your sentence down in smaller chunks. That's what you saw with the other 2 sentences as well. And we do that so that we can read the sentence slowly and in chunks so that we can understand the meaning presented by each and every chunk. If you try, I mean, this sentence is not very bulky, but our heirloom tomato was pretty long. The complete sentence, our slackening of growth sentence, that also had a few layers of information all put together in form of one sentence. When we have sentences like that, it's always easier to break them down into smaller chunks and deal with each and every chunk one at a time, and then put everything together to understand what the sentence is trying to say. So here also we have divided our sentence into two parts. The first part says, okay, let me just quickly activate my pen here. Okay. All right. So the first part says, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Okay. So this sentence is talking about a few things, you know, many of them, some things that were chiseled from solid rock. Now, the moment I read this part of the sentence, I kind of visualize the sentence. I get a picture in my mind that there is this huge chunk of rock, and maybe somebody or some people, they went there and they used chisel and hammer to carve out some things from that solid rock. Okay, that happens. We know in sculpture we use all the times the chisel and hammer, and in so many other places also those tools are used. Okay, so that makes sense. Now I'm going to read the second part of the sentence. The mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. Okay, so this part of the sentence is talking about a particular place, the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia. And what about this mountainous regions? You will find many monasteries, hundreds of monasteries on these mountainous regions. What do we mean by are dotted? We mean what the sentence tells you is that there are many monasteries on these mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia. Now, I'm going to start asking you a few questions, okay? The way the sentence is written, again, pay attention to my question. I'm asking, the way the sentence is written, what does it say? What is chiseled from solid rock? Which entity, according to the way the sentence is written, is chiseled from solid rock? All right, most of you are telling me it is the mountainous regions. And yes, that is correct. The way the sentence is written, you know, when I start my sentence, I tell myself that, okay, many of them are chiseled. So the next thing that I should read in the sentence, and that's my logical mind tells me that, yes, I should read about what is chiseled. However, when I read the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia, it kind of tells me, wait, something is not connecting properly over here, because mountainous regions cannot be chiseled. I mean, go back to your geography book. Do you remember reading about any man-made mountainous regions, any artificial mountainous regions that, you know, some king or some monarch sent an army of people with chisels and hammer and asked them to carve out mountainous regions? Most definitely not, right? That just does not happen. So I understand that the way my sentence is written, it is illogical. It's not at all okay. It will not let me do that. The pens for some reason do not quite work very nicely, so I'll work through my slides over here. My aspect 2 that I'm talking about here, that the mountainous regions were chiseled from solid rock many hundreds of years ago, this part just does not make sense in this sentence. Okay, now what shall I do? Shall I move on and start taking some help from my original sentence? I really don't need to do that. If I pay attention to this particular sentence, the way it is, we can get our answers. And let me ask that question to you. What logically should be talking about many of them chiseled? What is that entity in the sentence that can be chiseled, you know, through chisel and hammer by human beings from solid rock? And all of you know the answer. I don't need to tell you anything about that. Why? Because all of you are logical people. You all, and let's say we all, have that basic level of understanding of the workings of the world. That's our logical brain. And we can easily connect these logical dots to make sense of the sentence. So I completely understand, and I completely agree to this also, that you all completely understand that the way the sentence is written, it's not logical at all. It is not the mountainous regions that are chiseled. It should be hundreds of monasteries, because those are man-made entities in this sentence. Okay, so now that we understand the logic of the sentence so well, let's see, can we preempt or can we predict what should my correct answer choice look like? Okay, so let me ask you this question. Suppose I lift this part of the sentence from the beginning, okay, and I place this part right after monasteries. Will doing so make my sentence correct? What do you think about that? What I'm doing is I'm lifting many of them from the beginning of the sentence and I'm placing it right after monasteries or hundreds of monasteries. Okay, so most of you are saying that yes, that will make my sentence correct. And come to think of it, logically, that should make sense, right? Because now what we will say is that the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock. So now many of them will talk about hundreds of monasteries. Here, many of them was talking about the mountainous regions because that's the entity that was coming right after many of them. So our logical connection was going for them with the mountainous regions. But the moment we put this whole thing right after hundreds of monasteries, logically, I will only connect many of them with hundreds of monasteries, right? Because now they are placed absolutely close. So in this particular question, at least, we were able to understand that, okay, this is how my correct answer choice should look like. And this is the power of the meaning-based approach. Yes, we are spending a lot of time with the original sentence. I have not even gone to look at the other answer choices. But if I have the correct tools to dissect my original sentence, I can even come to a point where I can predict my correct answer choice. And without my being dependent on a ton of grammar rules that are there. I have not spoken about any grammar so far, if you've noticed. We have been able to decode this sentence only on the basis of the logic. And you will see how we arrive at the correct answer choice also only on our logical analysis. Just a little information about this question. It comes from Advanced Official Guide. Question number is already there. All we are trying to tell you through this question is that many a times you will come across a sentence correction problem that will not give you the logical meaning like we saw in this question. But everything that we require to know about the logic of the sentence is right there in the sentence. If you spend that time with the original sentence, inferring the intended logic will be easy for you. You will be able to break the sentence down, move a few things here and there, put them together to make the sentence logical. That's what we did with this sentence. Okay, so once we understand the logic, let's move on to our answer choices. Okay, let me broadcast the result. Very few of you chose choice A, and those answers also came towards the end by the time I was about to, end the poll. So of course, probably you guys were still confused. You were still making a choice. You were not sure what was happening. But yes, choice A is not the correct answer. Choice B is also wrong. Firstly, that I mean, you must have rejected choice B for the same reason, because the logic does not go together here. Other than that, there is another grammatical error in this sentence, dotted with many hundreds of monasteries. Definitely it leads to redundancy error, because hundreds of monasteries in any way means numerous. So there's no need to use many in this one. Now, choice C. Interestingly, if you compare the structure of choice C and choice A, you will see that the structure of choice C has been changed, and now it is communicating the logical meaning that hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries. Here, many of them is now correctly talking about hundreds of monasteries, and this is what we were looking for. Okay, so now that my logic falls in place in choice C, I'm going to take a little closer look at choice C and see what's going on in choice C. Now, choice C also has a grammatical error. Although it has fixed my logical error, I mean, you call it a grammatical error or a logical error, both can be accepted here. Are dotting. Hundreds of monasteries are dotting the mountainous regions. Now, we use present continuous or present progressive tense for those actions that are going on right now as you and I talk. But that is not the case. The monasteries are not coming up in this particular mountainous regions right now when I'm taking the session and you're attending the session. So most definitely the use of are dotting is incorrect in choice C. So those who chose choice C, you should have taken a closer look and should have analyzed the use of this verb. Now, over here in the slides, I have a few examples that will help you understand the difference between are dotting and word and dotted. So you'll get to understand. Now, as always, the tussle is always between choice D and choice E. And choice D is incorrect. 43% of you, maximum number of people, chose choice D, but I'm sorry, it is not the correct answer. And hold on to all your questions as of now. Many of them, many of which is right, which is wrong. Can we say are chiseled? Can we say were chiseled? What's going on? Why choice D is wrong? Hold on to all those questions related to choices D and E. If you wait to listen to my explanations for both the choices, you will understand why E is right and why D is wrong, okay? So let's just go by what's going on in choice D. Choice D, you know, it does what we were also preempting to do. Pick up many of them from the beginning of the sentence and place it after hundreds of monasteries. Yes, choice D does that. But where choice D lacks is it's the grammatical error, are chiseled. Why are chiseled? Because the sentence clearly says that these monasteries were chiseled centuries ago, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So an action that took place hundreds and hundreds of years ago, how can we use are chiseled? Can we say that the First World War is fought in 1914, or the First World War is starting in 1914, or it starts in 1914? No, we cannot say that. Something that has happened, something which is done, the action that is over, we always use the simple past tense verb for that particular action. Many of the students choose choice D because, yes, you know, a subject verb pair is much better in construction. It's very clear, it's very precise and concise, all those things. But if your grammar is wrong, you cannot go with that structure. It just doesn't make sense to say that we are using a simple past tense verb for an action that was done centuries ago. So now a question may arise in your mind. So if we change are chiseled to were chiseled, will choice D become correct? Yes. Choice D will become correct if we replace are with were. That's the only change we require to make this sentence correct. But we know that in one question we can have only one correct answer choice. So one other way of writing this question is what choice E tells us. And if you again compare it with the original sentence, which we have over here, and you compare this version of the sentence, it exactly lifts up this particular part of the sentence and places it without changing anything about it right at the end of the sentence. It's like the jigsaw puzzle, you know, the piece that I placed somewhere else with my original sentence. I could see that visually my picture was not right. Here I'm talking about logically my sentence was not right. So what I did was I picked up that piece from my sentence or from my jigsaw puzzle and put it at the right place so that visually my sentence, my puzzle becomes correct, and in case of SC, my sentence becomes logical. So in a jigsaw puzzle, we pick up the visual clues and we connect the different parts of the puzzle visually. In SC, we break the sentence down and we try to rearrange them logically to get the logical picture. All right, that's all that we do, and no need to worry about, you know, this modifier, that modifier. Very basic grammar, we understood that, okay, we cannot use simple present tense verb for a past action. We cannot use continuous tense for an action that is already done. Just simple, very basic grammar tools that we really require to solve this question. But really, it's the logic that's going to work for us. Okay? Okay. Now, the most burning question that comes about this choice, about this question, is the structure, is the use of many of which is correct in choice D? If it is correct, then why didn't we go for it? I told you, structure-wise, there is no problem with choice D. Everything is fine. You know, the way this sentence is written, choice D uses an independent clause and a dependent clause. This part is the dependent clause. I know I'm getting a little technical here, but you know, many of you will ask this question, so I just thought that I'll address it. So here the structure is really the independent clause and the dependent clause. And what do we see in choice E? We see the independent clause, and then we see a noun modifier which is talking about this noun over here right behind it, right? So both the structures are fine. We already know that one idea can be communicated through various structures. You know, there are many ways to reach Rome, right? That's what they say. So yes, there can be many structures that we can use to present an idea, but we must use those structures correctly. And I have already explained to you that it is this wrong verb tense that makes choice D incorrect. We don't have any such problem with choice E. Choice E is a pure modifier, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. No tension of, you know, contextually correct verb matching with centuries ago and so on and so forth. And simple thing, you know, the modifier that appeared right in the beginning of the sentence, in the original sentence, we just lifted it up and placed it right after monasteries because that is what it should be talking about, right? So can them and which be used interchangeably? I'm not saying that you can use which and them interchangeably. When you use them, they go by very specific structures. They have their very specific structures to follow. So if you use them with their correct structure, their usage will be correct. So don't try to learn the usage of them in which as them versus which. No, don't try to do that. If you really want to study the structure of this whole thing, many of which are chiseled from solid rock centuries, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries. There is really no need for that verb in choice E, but we need that verb in choice D because of these two different words that we are using. Okay, so different expressions will require different structures, and all of this you will learn in our SC course, because we do cover the grammar. But again, the idea over here is to tell you that don't get intimidated by those sentences that do not convey logical meaning. The original sentence has enough or they contain enough information and context to tell you what should be the logic of the sentence. Okay, does that make sense? Are you all comfortable with this question now? You could use the short answer poll and let me know yes or no. Okay, most of you are saying yes. Okay, so with this, now we are going to move on to our last question of this session, and that is definitely the most difficult question for this session. Okay, just a quick overview of question 3 that we solved. Choice E is the correct answer here. We needed 100% clarity, and only the clarity on the meaning or the logic of the sentence helped us solve the question correctly. Again, our underlined portion kept on increasing. Finally, with question 3, we came to a fully underlined sentence, but we did not change our approach at all. We still continued to stick to our meaning-based approach, and we were able to solve this question. Okay? So now, here you will see a few questions on your screen. Those are really not for you to answer as such, but a little introspection, right? What source do you use for solutions of every question that you solve? Now, most of you would say, well, if I'm solving OG questions, it is definitely the OG solutions that I look at, which I would say are pretty substandard. Otherwise, you go on GMAT Club. I was going to say that. Yes, that's our best bet to go to and look at the solutions or the answers given by experts. But here at e-GMAT, you know, the kind of detail that we provide for each and every question, and you've solved 3 questions with us in this session itself, and you will agree to us that when we say that, you know, the kind of detail that we provide for the solutions, nobody else does so, because we have a very set methodology to solve questions, and we solve each and every question using that methodology. We don't deviate from that. We are not going to tell you this with one sentence and that with another sentence. Not at all. So our approach is fixed, our method is fixed, our solutions are detailed, and that's how we create magic with sentence structure. Okay, with this, let me bring you in the poll for the last question. Once again, the drill is absolutely the same. Please click on still solving before I start showing you the question. Just a little disclaimer about this question. This is definitely the most difficult question of all the questions that we have solved. And now after 3 questions, I would really like to see you using your logical abilities to solve this question. Okay, so let's get a few more votes here, please. Can I request all of those who are participating but for some reason have missed clicking on still solving? Could you just do so? Get me a good number so that... Alrighty, here we go. Question number 4 on your screen. Read the sentence well, get the logic right, and then choose an answer. All the best. All right, as expected, you guys are taking a little longer to solve this one, but I'm not going to hurry you up with this one. Take your time. All right, last 10 seconds. All right. Last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, I'm going to end the poll over here. Okay, now before I move on to the analysis of this question, I have a quick question for you. How many of you are 100% confident of your selection? How many of you can say that I've made the right selection for the right reason? How many of you? I'm absolutely sure what I've chosen is right and my reasoning to do so is also 100% correct. Okay, the majority of you are still saying, I've chosen whatever I had to choose, but I'm not very sure whether my reasoning is correct or not. Okay, just wanted to get that clarity before I move on. That's pretty much fine. Thank you so much. Okay, now this is a really bulky question. There is no way we can read this whole thing in one go and try to understand the meaning of it. Okay, so what we have done is we have again divided this sentence into smaller chunks and we will try to understand the meaning by looking at each and every chunk. So let's begin. About 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded by leafy spurge. Okay, so this part of the sentence is pretty clear. A huge landmass in United States has been covered by what? By leafy spurge. Now, even if I don't understand what exactly leafy spurge is, I do understand that it's kind of a vegetation because it's talking about leafy something. So, of course, it has to be a vegetation. And yes, it is very possible for a vegetation to cover such a huge landmass in the United States. Okay, but the author has been very, very kind to us to tell us that a leafy spurge is a herbaceous plant from Eurasia with milky sap. Okay, so what is this leafy spurge? It's a herbaceous plant. Now, even if I don't understand herbaceous, I'm good. I know herb. We've all heard of herb. So yeah, okay, something herb-like, whatever. It's a plant. It comes from Eurasia. And what does it contain? It contains milky sap. So far, so good. Everything about leafy spurge. That gives mouth sores to cattle. Okay, so the way the sentence is written, it is telling me that it is the milky sap that gives mouth sores to cattle. And yeah, that's pretty logical, right? This leafy spurge contains some kind of a chemical. It looks like milky. Maybe it's white in color and it's sap. That means it's a liquid. So this vegetation contains this white liquid that gives mouth sores to cattle. Yeah, of course, it can react. So far, so good. Now comes the challenging part in the sentence. This part. Displacing grasses and other cattle food. Now, if you went through our free trial course before coming to this session, which is generally recommended, you must have read about this complex modifier called comma plus verb ing modifier. That's how we identify it at e-GMAT. It's an action modifier. It modifies the preceding action. So, the way this part of the sentence is written, it presents cause and effect. What is the cause? The cause is milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle. And then the sentence is saying that this is the effect of that action. Because milky sap in leafy spurge gives mouth sores to cattle, it displaces grasses. Displaces means it replaces. It stops the growth of grasses and cattle food, and it starts growing by itself. Now, if I were to ask you this question, is this cause and effect logical? What would you say? Is this cause and effect logical? Most of you are instantly saying, no, this cause and effect really does not make much sense. Because yes, milky sap can give mouth sores to cattle, but in that action, how can milky sap replace grasses and other cattle food? How can it do so? How can it be replaced, or how can it displace grasses and cattle food? This cause and effect just does not make any sense. So we definitely have something going wrong with this one. Now the sentence does not stop here. We still have that last part of the sentence that is presenting another effect of the same cause. So this is my effect 1 and this is my effect 2. Now let's check the second cause and effect. The sentence is saying that because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, it renders rangeland worthless. That means what it does in that process is that it makes the grazing ground, useless. Is this cause and effect making sense to you? That because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, it leaves the cattle. It is the milky sap that makes the grazing grounds useless. I'm surprised that most of you are saying yes, but that is not the case. Why? Because milky. Okay, let me give you another alternative. Okay, and then you compare these two options and then you tell me which one makes better sense. One cause and effect is presented by the sentence. Okay, it is saying that because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, it makes grazing grounds worthless. Who is doing that action? The milky sap. It is the milky sap that is making the rangeland useless. Okay, now I'm telling you that leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, and because this action is happening, because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, the rangeland become worthless. Okay, the grazing grounds become worthless. Now, which one do you think make logical sense? The logic given in the sentence or the logic that I give? The second one or the first one? Yes, the latter. Leafy spurge is the reason. Absolutely right. See, I just asked you a question, and when you compare the two scenarios, then you tell me that yes, that's what makes sense, that because leafy spurge displaces all the grasses and the cattle food, that's why the grazing grounds become useless, because the sentence has already said that milky sap gives mouth sore to cattle. Right? So the cattle will not go out and eat leafy spurge, because when they eat leafy spurge, when they chew leafy spurge, the milky sap comes out in the process of chewing, and that milky sap leaves mouth sores. Right? So we understand that both these actions must be somehow connected to leafy spurge to make the sentence logical. Because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food. Replace, right? You need to have similar entities to replace something, right? You can replace a pen with a pencil to write on a piece of paper, right? So if you're saying that cattle food is getting replaced, it is replaced by another vegetation, right? And that vegetation is leafy spurge, and we know that this vegetation does not agree with the cattle because they get mouth sore, and because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, the effect of that action is that the grazing grounds become useless, because now the cattle will not go and eat leafy spurge from those grazing grounds. Okay, so this is, yes, we had to work really hard in this sentence to understand this meaning, but all these links are, what shall I say, inferable. You can definitely make these links in your head because the sentence contains everything that you need to know about the logic of this sentence. It's right there. All you need to do is that you need to work through it. Now you would say that, listen, in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, how do you expect us to do that? No, I'm not expecting you to do this in real exam. You will have to work with this process. You will have to develop that muscle memory to put this practice, to put this process to use, to come to that point that whenever you see an SC sentence, you start thinking in terms of meaning rather than looking at the grammar of the sentence. And that will require practice. That will take some time. But I'm just trying to show you the efficacy of this meaning-based approach, how well it fits into the context of especially these kind of questions, which are so context heavy. I mean, intrinsically, you may say that, yeah, the question does not read too bad. No, it doesn't read too bad. But imagine the kind of layers of information that we unfolded when we started to analyze this question. And that's the kind of logical analysis we require to solve our difficult SC questions. Okay? Now, with this understanding, let's now move on to our answer choice analysis. Now, most of you landed on choice B, which indeed is the correct answer. Okay. However, and that's why I just wanted to get the clarification from you that did you arrive at the correct answer because of the right reason? And now see how beautifully everything falls in this sentence. You know, just analyze this answer choice. About 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded by leafy spurge. Correct sense. Explanation about leafy spurge, a herbaceous plant from Eurasia. By the way, this herbaceous plant comes with milky sap. You see, this piece of information with milky sap is between 2 commas. Why? Because it says that, yeah, this is just an FYI information. Right? FYI information. And then I have that over here. That is now connecting to a herbaceous plant. Again, a little bit of structural nuance here, because with milky sap is between 2 commas, my that can jump over milky sap and can talk about a herbaceous plant, which is nothing else but the leafy spurge according to my sentence. Right? And so, both these actions, gives mouth sores to cattle, is connecting with leafy spurge, and displaces grass, also connects with leafy spurge. And because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, the effect of that action is that the grazing grounds become worthless. Okay? Now, many students reject choice B because they say, wait a minute, you guys have been talking about don't change the meaning, focus on the meaning. But here I say, I see the meaning change in choice B. How? Well, choice A told me that milky sap gives mouth sore. And now in this choice, I am reading that leafy spurge is giving mouth sore. Don't you think there is a meaning change? Let me ask you this question. Do you think that's a meaning change? Saying leafy spurge is giving mouth sore and saying that leafy spurge is giving mouth sore, is that really a meaning change here? No, it is not. Why? Because they are not exclusively independent of each other. They are not. It is the leafy spurge that contains milky sap. And cattle, they are not going and licking milky sap out of leafy spurge. They are only getting mouth sore when they are eating leafy spurge, and in the act of chewing leafy spurge, that milky sap is getting secreted, and then they are getting the mouth sore. So the sentence gets little technical here about saying that it is the milky sap in the leafy spurge that is giving mouth sore. But you know, when we fall into the trap of sentences like this, we kind of segregate them. That's where our logical analysis should come in. That, hey, no, it's the same thing, because it is the leafy spurge that contains milky sap. They are not mutually independent entities. They are not absolutely exclusive entities, right? So there is no meaning change at all in choice B. Okay, so see, the sentence again, I would say, looks very simple on the face, but it has these undercurrents of logic going on with the sentence. Now, in choice B, I spoke about the modification by that, right? How that is going to, how it is referring to a herbaceous plant jumping over this. It is called faraway noun modification. We have one of our most famous articles on GMAT Club by the same name. You can take a look at this article and you can understand all about this nuance of how a noun modifier can modify faraway noun. I will share the PDF with you at the end of this session. So we have all the examples for you. You can take a look at them at your leisure. Try to understand how it works, what are the conditions, and you will be surprised to know, or maybe you will not be surprised to know, that this structure is pretty much very frequently employed in official sentences as well. On the screen, you can see two official examples. There are many actually. If you go to that article on GMAT Club, the link of which we will share at the end of presentation again, you will see so many official questions that actually has that structure. And you can also view the solutions for these two questions done by Stacy on our YouTube channel as well. We will share the link also for these ones, okay? So coming back to our leafy spurge, yes, choice B is the correct answer. Not many of you chose choice C because the error is very, very apparent. You know, I mean, if I break the sentence down, it looks like parallel structure. I have having milky sap and displacing grasses, but then this list is not logically parallel, because having milky sap is a quality or a characteristic of leafy spurge, but displacing grasses is an action that a leafy spurge does. So we cannot have a quality and an action as a list. Okay, and then once again, we definitely have this modifier, which we do not know where to connect it or which entity it is modifying. So it's just kind of hanging in there without really getting connected with the rest of the sentence. Another beauty of doing sentence structure, when we break the sentence down into its layers and try to understand the meaning, the first thing I notice is that, hey, where is the verb for my subject? I can see that blue, but I don't see any green for that blue. This blue has 3 greens. Wow, that's fantastic. but where is the green for that blue? That means my subject is there, but my verb is not there anymore in the sentence with choice D. So that is, and you know, the missing verb error, the missing subject error, these are the most blatant errors we can find in SC, and the easiest to identify, the easiest to reject an answer choice on the basis of. Okay, so that's my first error. And then take a look at this part over here. What the sentence is saying is that milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle. Okay, I agree to that. Milky sap displaces grasses and other cattle food? No way. It's the leafy spurge that does so. It's not that milky sap comes oozing out of leafy spurge and then it'll kill all the grass and then displace. Means there has to be something in place of those grasses, right? So yeah, doesn't make sense. And it is the milky sap that makes the grazing grounds useless? Most definitely not. It is the displacement of the grasses that make the grazing grounds useless. Okay, so choice D looks, I mean, it is not even grammatical because we have this missing verb over here, and this list looks nice, looks clean and neat, but definitely makes no sense. So choice D is out, and choice E again repeats the very same error. This choice is saying that milky sap gives mouth sore. We accept that, but it is again saying that milky sap is displacing grasses and other cattle food, which is definitely wrong. And once again, we have this modifier, which is just hanging like that in the sentence. It's not really connecting to anything in this sentence. Okay, so looking at everything, we conclusively say that choice B indeed is the correct answer. Okay, so with this, just a little stats, an overview of this question. This question was very context heavy. Huge portion of the sentence was underlined. Splits, as we saw, you know, it was not, you know, especially towards the end, we saw a lot of combinations with displacing and displaces and rendering and renders and so on and so forth, but none of them would work unless you understood the logic of the sentence and tried to put everything in the logical context and then look at choice B and say that, yes, this is exactly what we've been looking for. So before moving on to the answer choices, it is imperative that you understand, you fix everything logically in the sentence first, and then you start looking at your answer choices to make sure that what part of the grammar you can fix to convey that logic that you have inferred from the sentence. Okay, so that is all for now from my side. Thank you so very much for being so patient, and I hope you enjoyed doing this session with us as much as we enjoyed taking this session. And for the last part of the session, which is the Q&A, I would like to invite Rajat in this session. Thank you very much, everybody. And Rajat, over to you.
Thank you, Shraddha. And let me just make sure I have the right mic. I do. And I'm going to just clear the polls here and get to my end of session presentation. Okay, first things first, feedback on the session. How did you like it? What did you learn from it? Just some feedback in the short answer, but I'm going to clear the poll. So if I know some of you have already given the feedback, but if you don't mind typing it again, that'd be really good. All right. Perfect. Very good. 9 out of 10 is a very numerical way of giving feedback. That's good to know. We like that. Okay. So what I want to do in this is I kind of saw some questions that were there in the Q&A pod while Shraddha was explaining this particular question, and I saw some of the questions that were there earlier as well. So I want to talk about how each one of you can get to that 90th percentile. So that's what this last 10-15 minutes would be about. I want to first of all understand how many of you are e-GMAT students, and that's something, because this session is also for you guys this portion is also for you guys. How many of you are paid students, essentially, and how many of you are people who are using the free trial? So if you're a paid student, select yes. If you're just using the free trial, select no. Okay, and thank you for the comments, for appreciation. It's really useful. So all right, I think I don't have all the responses of about 100 students here in the webinar right now. I only have about 23 responses. I would appreciate a few more on the yes no poll. If you're an e-GMAT student, select yes. If you're not an e-GMAT student, select no. So and the takeaways are wonderful. Okay, and it's great to see that that you guys believe in the meaning-based approach, and you guys will follow it. So the next part of the session, I'm going to talk about what does it take to imbibe that meaning-based based approach, and how should you go about doing this. Okay, because clearly many of you don't solve every question using the meaning-based approach, and we want to make sure that you do that, because that's the only way to success. And I'm going to first present some quotes by students who've aced the GMAT using the meaning-based approach. There's one guy, Dr. Rohit Singh Malan, is a Kellogg admit, and this guy was someone who had aced every exam prior to taking the GMAT. He's a doctor by profession, so he aced the Indian medical entrance exam. He's also an IDES officer, so he aced the IAS exam. But then when it came to the GMAT, he was actually stuck at a V32. Why? Because he was approaching GMAT sentence correction through grammar. And what would happen is, as he would see difficult questions, he would get confused because his brain would tell him, hey, many options sound correct, and which is what would typically happen when you get to that 700 level questions. But then once he imbibed the meaning-based approach, he was able to isolate and reject answer choices with confidence, and that's what helped him improve to that 96th percentile. Okay. Similarly, Jim Yi, this guy was a native, a Chinese Canadian. He was stuck at a 700. SC being one of the areas where he was stuck at. He was at that 65th percentile in SC, again, very similar to that V32 equivalent. And he learned the same thing. When you get to that 700 level questions, it's not going to be grammar. It's going to be the meaning piece, and the only way to get there in 90 seconds. And again, people were talking about timing. Meaning-based approach does save a lot of time as well. Now, and this is something that you would see if you researched information on GMAT clubs. So I'm going to share the number of 700 plus scores that were reported between June and October. In fact, if you look at the number of 700 plus scores reported in the year 2021, the stats would be very similar. e-GMAT has reported 61% of all 700 plus scores in this time frame. The only other company to report any significant number of 700 plus scores was Target Test Prep. And all the other partners, and mind you, GMAT Club had about 12 partners at that time. So all the other partners outside of e-GMAT and Target Test Prep, they together accounted for just about 14%. Okay, and this is kind of a bit better split of it. Again, very similar data points, and you can really see that over here. Okay, and the reason for this is, again, the success comes. Your success comes when you use the right kind of methods. And at e-GMAT, we pioneered the three approaches. The meaning-based approach. Payal Tandon, who's my co-founder, she pioneered that meaning-based approach, as well as the reading strategies approach in RC. And then with pre-thinking, that was something that we pioneered in 2012. And right now, more than one test prep company uses that approach. And that's one of the reasons we are, and Shraddha is one of the top instructors on GMAT Club. So on GMAT Club, you'll see about 300 instructors who are rated. Shraddha is in the top 5 instructors over there. Okay. Now, I want to ask you this one question. What is the one thing that you need to master the meaning-based approach? And I'm going to just clear the yes-no poll. What is that one skill that you need? Logic understanding, okay. Inference, good. I am looking at this. Practice, comprehending capacity, all good skills, all relevant answers. Proper reading, really good answer. Patience. It's good to see such stuff over here, and you're kind of your answers are on the on spot. Now, what do you need to comprehend? What do you need to understand the logic? Yes, I love the answer just came in. The ability to break down the sentence to extrapolate that meaning. That, in our opinion, is one of the most important skills, and we call this ability to really see sentence structures. So when you think about a 700 level question, whether it's a short sentence or whether it's a lengthy sentence that such as the leafy spurge example, it has multiple sentence structures, and to be able to get to the intended meaning, the logical intended meaning, that is, you need to understand, you need to be able to see through those sentence structures. You should be able to isolate the modifiers, modify the logical entity. If there are comparisons, you should be able to see, are the comparisons logical, and to do that, you need to be able to isolate the sentence structure. Someone asked me this question. This is, I'm an e-GMAT student. I'm enjoying the SC course, but I didn't do the master comprehension course. Should you do it? The answer is absolutely yes, you should do it, because that's where you get the foundation of sentence structure. So if you're an e-GMAT student, you're going through the e-GMAT course, pay attention to what you learn in the master comprehension course. As you go through it, solve this, appreciate the beauty of sentence structures as you see them in the examples and the post learning activity quizzes and the pre-session quizzes as well, because it's these sentence structures that build that foundation for that 700 level ability. Of course, you need to know grammar, that's there, but most of you do that well. What you don't do well is the sentence structure approach. Those who don't get to that 90th percentile, if you start focusing on those sentence structures and the impact that they have on grammatical errors, you would find that acing GMAT sentence correction becomes a lot easier. Okay. Now, how many different sentence structures do you think you have on the GMAT? If you were to guess, how many different sentence structures? Yes, just 20, okay. 5, 30, all right. Honestly, no clue, okay. Typically at e-GMAT, when we've cataloged everything that's there, the answer is close to 200. Okay, so it's not 20 or 30, it's about 200 sentence structures, yes. And you've seen that. I mean, you saw 4 examples here. Each example had about 10 to 11 sentence structures when you look at this. And it's mastery of that sentence structures, those sentence structures, that's what leads to enhances your ability to solve that 700 level question, because you can then identify errors and then correct errors. And that's one of the reasons why people who achieve that 90th percentile, they are not the ones who solve hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of questions. They are the ones who actually are able to identify how various sentence structures impact the meaning, and then are able to distinguish between which aspect of the meaning is logical, which one's not. Okay, and which is why when you think about and you look at the e-GMAT course, at every aspect we have feedback built into it. Why? Because that feedback tells you when you're not able to identify the sentence structures and when you're not able to improve. For example, everyone knows that subject and verb must agree in number, but then how do you figure out which subject and which verb? It's the sentence structure that helps you figure out, for a particular verb, what's the subject, or for a particular subject, what's the corresponding verb. And it's all a game of sentence structure, and unless and until you get that feedback, you're not going to be able to figure out, oh, this is where I faltered. Okay. How many of you have actually seen, if you go to our homepage, you have this video which talks about how we give 500 points of feedback to you. How many of you have seen this video? And this is the video that's out there, this video over here. Okay. If you want to really see why this feedback is important and how we do this, watch this video and watch the application level video. And that's where, achieving 60th percentile is easy. Achieving 90th percentile is about that precision. Okay, can you answer this other question? Who's a 60th percentile student? And what's the difference between a 60th percentile student and a 90th percentile student? Can you answer this question? It's absolutely not practice. Or you can say it's practice. A 60th percentile student probably solves 5 times as many questions as a 90th percentile student. Okay, method and refinement. When it comes to easy questions, is there a difference between, let's just do a yes-no poll. I'm going to put in a yes-no poll here. Let's see, where is my yes-no poll? Yeah, it's at the bottom. When it comes to an easy question, is there a difference between a 60th and a 90th percentile student? Yes or no? I'm going to remove broadcast results. Okay, let's get this very simple question. Easy question. Is there a difference between a 60th and a 90th percentile student? And a perceptible difference, that is. 3, 2, and 1. I'd appreciate more participation because this is important. 55% of you say yes, 45% of you say no. The answer is no, there is no difference. When it comes to medium difficulty questions, is there a difference between a 60th and a 90th percentile student? And a perceptible difference, which is more than 5 to 7% difference in accuracy. 3, 2, and 1. You got more participation. Medium difficulty question, is there a difference? 3, 2, and 1. Good. Let me end the poll, and I'm going to broadcast the results. 74% of you say yes, and 26% say no. The answer is no. There is no difference. Even for medium difficulty questions, a 60th percentile student will get to that 80% accuracy. A 90th percentile student will get to that 90% accuracy. So there's a difference, yes, but it's not as perceptible. The difference, and then the next question is actually an obvious question, comes when it comes to medium hard and hard questions. And that's where the difference is absolutely perceptible. And I shared this account walkthrough for one of our students, Christos, and you can see the difference over here. A 90th percentile student would be able to answer 65 to 70% of hard questions correctly. A 60th percentile student would only be able to answer 35% of hard questions correctly. Or in other words, a 90th percentile student will be able to answer twice as many hard questions correctly. Okay. And that's one of the reasons, that's what I call as the reason why I asked this question, is because this leads to what we call as a practice fallacy. You practice questions, you say, hey, getting a ton of questions, right? And yes, for easy and medium, you will, not for hard. And that's where the difference does show up. And we have seen this thousands and thousands of times or so. And which is why, if you're an e-GMAT student, and if you are in that stage, we ask you to do cementing medium and cementing hard, and because cementing hard tells you, are you ready to be coached to become a 90th percentile student? Are you ready to break that 60th percentile plateau in that way? Okay. What's the value of this feedback? The value of this feedback is, as you go through the learning phase, regardless of what your starting ability is, because the feedback asks you to do course correction, your ending ability is always beyond a certain minimum threshold. And again, of course, your starting ability is higher, you will of course end up with higher ability. But even the 30th percentile guy, if he or she acts on feedback, will get to that 80th percentile ability potential. Without feedback, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have a certain minimum threshold of ability on the output, because hey, your gaps will remain, and you get upwards of 100 points of feedback in the learning phase just in the SC course over there. Okay. So let me just show you some of how some of this feedback manifests. Here's one of the simplest modules out there, which is subject, verb, agree, number. What you see is, a very comprehensive set of learning activities. You can see, how long these learning activities are. But what you also see is that every activity is evaluated. This is not the completion percentage. This is the system's evaluation of how well you've understood these activities. Here again, you can see this person didn't understand this very, very well, but he actually revised, which is why he was able to get a good score here, and as well as he was able to do well over here. SV application didn't do as well, but look at the time that this person spent. This activity is about 22 minutes long, but because he went back, revised this, he was able to do well. And this reinforcement and checking subsequently is really essential. Okay. So again, the same piece I talked about, 60% revision led to a high score in the SV practice quiz over here. Verbs, a relatively more sophisticated module here. Again, you can see the amount of time spent by the student. And why is this important? Because this data tells us the diligence level of a student. There's a way to really get through these files quickly, and there's a reason. And if you do that, especially for files which we know are distinguishing files, which people struggle through, verb sequencing is one such file. Verbs application is another such file. We know this person is intelligent. He's just going through the motions. But achieving 90th percentile is not about going through the motions. It's about building that love for that subject and really focusing to learn and understand. Actually, achieving 90th percentile is also about not worrying about timing, but worrying about learning. If you go through the course with that attitude, you would learn that or you would achieve that 90th percentile. You will not face those timing issues. Okay. Here's another example. This guy scored low on this verbs practice quiz, but then he got 100% here in the official set of questions. And you'll see why. Because the two questions that he got wrong, he bookmarked those questions, he revised those questions, he was able to correct those errors right there, and then hence the subsequent quizzes he was able to improve. Okay. And people translate this with different things. He says, hey, I knew the grammar, but it was the application of concepts where I faltered, and which is where, in his third attempt, this was his third attempt, he was able to get to a V40 and a 730. Okay, so that was it. I'm not going to take a whole lot of your time. So what should you do next? Make sure you go through the free trial. Watch the verb ed, verb ing modifier files. Look at how this learning method is different from what you would have used elsewhere. If you're an e-GMAT student, I would just one advice that I can give you is focus on learning and understanding the content rather than worrying about going through the files quickly. And stay focused. When you're studying, stay completely focused. Resist that temptation of watching a 5-minute YouTube video between files or during that study session. Challenge yourself to really say, I'm going to do this for an hour, and nothing's going to distract me for an hour. And then after that hour, make notes for 5 minutes, and then you can do anything you want. But build good study habits, build a love for learning, and you'd find that 90th percentile is not very, very difficult. Okay. With that, I'll be happy to take on any question that you have. I'll also share the session PDF, or Shraddha, if you want to share the session PDF, that's there. But yeah, any question that you have, you can put that in the Q&A pod, and I'll be happy to share that. Hopefully you guys found the last few minutes useful, and I think you can download the files over here. Thank you, Shraddha, for setting this up. Also, there are some excellent solution links that Shraddha has shared, where on the extreme right, right after the rate this session here, please go watch those solutions. You'll see the meaning-based approach that's used to solve such difficult questions. Okay. Also, the SC articles are on top as well. So, and the session PDF, top left-hand corner. I know there's a lot of information out there. So my apologies. Yes, just make sure you take what you need, not what you don't need. Yes. And also we have another quant webinar tomorrow. Please make sure you join that as well if you need help with I think we have a geometry webinar tomorrow. Let me just make sure I confirm. Yes, with GMAT geometry, if you need help with that, quadrilaterals is what we'll solve in that. Make sure you join that too. Questions? Any questions? Questions go in the Q&A pod. I'm going to actually hide the comments piece so that we have more space for the Q&A pod. And yes, the session's being recorded. So you will get the recording in an email. Okay, now, and thank you for rating. I mean, I love 71% of you rating this as a perfect, and that's good. I have a couple of you raising your hands, guys. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A pod. I don't know if I allow you to raise your hand. What would it lead to? So please put the question in the Q&A pod. That'd be wonderful. So yes. Also, I want to just ask this one question, and this is something for me. How many of you now would genuinely approach your GMAT preparation not as a chore, but as something that would, as something that you with a renewed love, I would say, because I know a lot of people hate GMAT preparation. But how many of you would approach this with, or at least give it an opportunity to really say, hey, this is something that I should love? Because I will tell you this, that it's your GMAT. The regimen that you build in for GMAT preparation is not, it's going to help you not only for to ace the GMAT and get into a top business school. This is also something that will help you in your in your during MBA case study method. It's because again, it's the same skills that you need to read case studies critically. Also, a lot of our students who now are in consulting, they come back to us and really say, hey, the pre-thinking approach that you talk about in critical reasoning, we use that in hypothesis building and consulting all the time. So your GMAT preparation is something which these habits that you build in right now, they're going to help you during your life. So it's a good time to inculcate those habits. Okay. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It was great having you guys, and I look forward to seeing you on e-GMAT.com. Link for tomorrow's webinar. Let me actually share. That's a good question. Just stay with me. And I should have had that, but I can get that in about 30 seconds. And here is the link. Here is the link. You should have it now. All right, perfect. See you guys tomorrow, and good luck for the session, and good luck for your learning. Happy learning, as I say. Bye-bye.